Hi, my name is Chris. This is my 2005 Ford Focus. I just changed the engine on it and I wanted to make a video on how to do that because I found videos on YouTube on how to do that, but they weren't specific to this model. This is the Duratec motor, and I wanted to make a video on the procedure, which I did, what's the fastest way to do this. Okay, to begin with, what we want to do is drain the coolant, drain the oil, and also this is a manual transmission, so we would drain the gear lube out of the transmission, or if you have an automatic, you drain that too. First, some of this stuff, it doesn't matter what order you go in. Like but you will need to get the battery out, remove this air box. Once you get the battery out, take this battery tray out. They're like half-inch bolts, because they're on mine they were kind of rusted, and you want to use a 6-point socket on there, because mine rounded out a little bit. But if I used a half-inch socket on it with a 6-point, it would work fine. The next thing is to remove the you want to remove this intake manifold, because I ran into a problem with mine on how to get the power steering pump out. There's 4 bolts here, and if you can see, this is the high pressure line going down, and the 4th bolt is behind that, and there's no, if you can see how tight that is, there's really no way to get a wrench in there even from the bottom. When I installed this back in, I left that bolt out because the belt is pulling this way on it anyway. But so what you want to do is take this intake manifold off. Okay, you want to remove the battery tray. These bolts can be rusted. You might want to lube them up a little bit with some penetrating oil. And they're half-inch bolts, at least the ones on mine were. They might have been rusty at one time, but you need a 6-point so you don't round them off. Get the battery tray out of the way. This comes off. You want to take the intake manifold off. An easy way to do that, since the motor is going to come out, you take this, you drain all the fluids out, coolant, oil, and trans fluid. This is a manual transmission, by the way. Then you'll take the bolts out here that hold the motor mount. There's 3 of them. There's one here, and one on the other side, which you can't see. And then you just leave that loose. And now you can jack up the motor. And what you want to do is get high enough up so you can get these bolts out for the manifold. Here, this is the manifold that I did not use, that came off the motor. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts that hold it on. That's what it looks like on the front side. There's a hole to get through this one. The other ones, you can get to them, one here and here. And then this one right here, you go underneath the car to get this one. Putting them back on, you want to take a piece of, at least this is what I did, with the motor jacked up out of the car far enough, you can get into this one. But putting it back on, what I did is I taped the bolts to the socket. Otherwise, if they fall in, they fall down here, and it's kind of a hassle to get it back out again. Now, when I did this, I don't have a garage myself, but I was able to find a place that has a hoist or car lift, and I had an engine hoist, which you will need, and basically, if a lift really helps, but you don't have to have it. You can do it with just the engine hoist, but you do need to keep in mind the engine is going to go, at least the way I did, the engine's going out through the bottom, so you need to lift the car up with jacks or whatever high enough to clear that, so you can drag the motor back out once you're done. Another thing you want to do first, you'll remove the wheels. You need to take out the nuts that hold the CV joints or CV axles into the uprights or spindles, and that is a 1 1/4 inch. I use this bar, and sometimes I put a pipe on it to get leverage. And you loosen those up. If you're working by yourself, what you can do, if the car has vacuum in it, just stick a bar. I use a jack handle myself, and I wedge it between the pedal and the seat, and that applies the brakes, and that locks them up, so I'm able to, not worried. If you just stick it in gear, it'll probably turn the engine over while you're doing this. So you need to really lock the brakes up or have someone help you with this. Okay, the next thing would be is to remove the bottom ball joints from the uprights. It's a Torque-Fix socket in the front with a 15 millimeter nut on the back. Remove those, pound that out, pound the bolt out. Then you want to take a little wedge where it wraps around the stud for the ball joint, and open that up a little bit. And on most of these cars, you can just push down on the lower control arm, and it'll come free from the spindle or upright. And at that point, you should be able to pull the CV joint out of there. And then on this side, about straight down here, there's a carrier bearing. It's there's two bolts. They're 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. You take those off. Take the carrier, the shell off for the carrier bearing that holds it in, and then that axle will just slide out. And once you have that in, or once you have that out, there's you do the same on the other side, except this one, there's a little locking ring on the inside of it, and you need to pound that out. And the easiest way to do it is go from the inside of the transmission. Once you have that CV joint on this side out, you take a screwdriver, and you can look inside there, and you'll see where the axle is, and there'll be a pinion going across, and you go on one side of the pinion or the other and take a screwdriver and pound that out that way. It works a lot easier than trying to use a puller or something like that. Now, as you can see, this motor is in there kind of tight, and and what I wanted to do was take apart the least amount of things that I could. I wanted to make this job as small of a job as I could, even though it is a big job. So it comes down to what you can leave on and what you can't. One thing I wanted to do was not disconnect the air conditioning, because I didn't want to have to recharge it, and you don't have to. On the air conditioner, there's 3 bolts. I think they're 1/2 inch. And you pull those 3 out, and you can just let that hang. The next thing, almost the first thing you want to do is really remove the intake manifold, because once you get this out of the way, it frees you up to work on that, and also the power steering pump. What you do is, and with the motor mount free, what you do is you get the motor mount, once it's loose, shove the motor far back as you can. With this out, you'll take the throttle body off. This comes off, and then with jacking the motor up, you get the bolts out. Take that out. Once that's out, then the next thing you do is take the power steering pump off. These are 10 millimeter? Yeah, I think they're 10 millimeter. You have to take the power high pressure hose off first, which is a 18 millimeter wrench is what you're going to need. But you can see right here, with the intake manifold gone, you can wrench it from this side, and then you can get access to the bolt that's behind it, and then power steering's out of the way. Then once the front's clear, now you can pull the motor back. You do not need to take the rear exhaust manifold or the exhaust manifold off. But you do need to take the heat shield off, which is kind of a problem. To do this, you want to remove the alternator first. There's really no way around it. You have to take the alternator out. There's 1 bolt and 2 studs with nuts on them. You take those off, and then disconnect the wiring for the alternator. Once that's out of the way, you slide the motor as far forward as you can. These bolts, if you, at least on mine, I had to heat them up. You want to get them like red hot to, to break the bond. And then take those out. There's 2 or 3 on each side. My heat shield's somewhat rusted, so I didn't have to take all of it out. Once the heat shield's off, it's pretty much, I'll show you on the other motor. This is the old motor. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts that hold the exhaust manifold on. And the alternator goes on right here. This is one of the studs. Let me see. I know there's 3. One's a bolt, and there's two studs. I'm not sure which one it is. Could be these 2 maybe. So they'll give you a good look at that. The reason why I changed this motor was it had a rod knock in it, and it had 160,000 miles on it, and it did have blow-by too, but mostly the rod knock, I mean, once you get that, the motor's days are numbered. So okay, so you get the heat shield, alternator's gone, heat shield's gone. You're able to get to the nuts to hold the exhaust manifold on. Now once that's loose, you want to tie that back, maybe hook it to get a coat hanger or something to tie it, and maybe use the windshield wiper just to pull it back out of the way. I believe I removed this too, just to doing this. When you have the intake manifold out of the way, you can pull the motor forward a little bit, and it'll give you a little bit more room. And you can get this heat shield. You want to unfold it this way and this way. And I forgot I took it out this way or this way, and you can kind of get it out of there. You don't want to damage this, because you want to be able to reuse it. I mean, Ford put it in there for a reason. You also got some heat protection on these heater hoses, and there's wiring right here. So yeah, you want to keep that. Oh, also, before you start jacking the engine up, you want to, this hose is not so bad, but you do need to disconnect that bottom radiator hose, because that's going to limit how high you're going to be able to go. But you should, when I did this, I disconnected this hose here and all the other hoses too. But once you have the battery and stuff out of the way, you disconnect all this, all the wiring connections you want to disconnect. Except the stuff that actually hooks up to the transmission, you can leave that on, because that harness, I just dropped it down with the engine, and it just stayed on the transmission. But basically, any of the wiring you see here, you're going to disconnect it. It's just disconnect it, get it out of the way, do it right off the bat. Also, take your dipstick out. This is plastic. If you hit it on something, you'll break it. Once the intake manifold's off, also take the dipstick tube and just bend it forward a little bit, and that'll give you more room. Because what you want to do, I mean, the motor's got to come a little bit forward to clear the the carrier, for the subframe. Also, on the serpentine belt, you might want to take a picture. On my car, there is no picture that shows you how to do this, what it actually looks like. So, and you may forget how it went in, so that's one thing to maybe keep in mind. This motor also is this is a 2.3, and this one is an 04. And it used the aluminum valve cover, which is different. You can see right here, I taped this together because the other one is, the 05 is a plastic valve cover, and it fits this. This one must have had a rubber hose or something that connected on here. And this is temporary. I'm waiting for a gasket, and I'll replace this with the plastic valve cover. But this is metered air. It goes, it's past the mass air sensor. So this is metered, so you don't want to have an air leak here. So, and with the battery and stuff out of the way, you would disconnect. There's some wiring connections. You disconnect the oxygen sensors also, and loosen those from. There's like a mount for those. You take those out. You also have, I don't know if you can see right down in there, the shifter cables. They're like spring loaded. If those little springs break, you can take a wire tie, because sometimes they come loose, and if you're shifting, you won't be able to shift the car. It'll start coming loose again. Just take a wire tie and tie it down to where they mount, and that'll keep them from turning if the little springs are not working on them. And where they connect to the shifters on the transmission, you pull the center piece out, and then they'll pop out. The first thing that's going to go in is the power steering pump. I mean, once you have the engine, and you can have the exhaust manifold, hooked up first too, before this. But you put the power steering pump off, because this line goes on the inside. When you put the air conditioner back up, it's going to go on the outside of this. So you want to do this, hook up the pressure line, and basically, the intake manifold's the last thing you're going to put in. Because like before, like taking it out, you're still going to have it jacked up so you can get to the bolts. But you also, with it out, you have also easy access to the thermostat, which if you haven't replaced that, it's a good time to replace it. Okay, this is a different transmission, but if you were also to disconnect the wiring on the transmission, there's only two connections on the manual. There's the speed sensor here, and this is probably the reverse, the backup light. Also, this is a good time, if you've gone this far and you haven't changed your clutch, to do this. These are mostly plastic. This is the slave cylinder and the throwout bearing here. They don't use a pilot bearing, because this is it's got bearings too close together here, so I guess I don't need it. Remember me telling you about taking the CV joint out, or CV shaft? Once you have this one out of the way, you can take a screwdriver right in here, and the pinion, you can see it, if you looked inside here, you could see it going across the pinion shaft for that has the pinion gears on it. You just go in between those and hit the shaft on the other side out. Other than that, I mean, while you got this apart, this is a good time to change seals or something like that, or change the clutch. I was going to change the clutch, but they want like $400 for this, and I only paid $400 for a motor, so I figured, forget that. Now this is the front side of the engine where the intake manifold hooks up. You can see all the bolt holes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. You can look at the picture and count them yourself. Here's where the thermostat goes. These hoses for the, it's not on here, but for the PCV valve. If you haven't changed that, they lots of times collapse and they get cracks in them. That's a good thing to change while you got this apart. Also, you're going to need some specialty tools on this. If you have the Torx bits, or whatever you want to call them. There's another ones that they're like a female style, and you're going to need these for if you have a manual transmission, which the motor I bought, this is the automatic flywheel, and it just uses regular bolts. But on the clutch, or for the flywheel, it uses these female Torx bits. And also, if you notice, there's no weights on these flywheels, so the motor must obviously be internally balanced on these. Also, the bolt holes are all the same distance apart, so that you can put this flywheel on anyway. It doesn't really matter. So that's my video. I hope this was helpful. I know changing a motor is a big job. By the way, this took me maybe 11 to 12 hours to get it out. I know it sounds like a lot, but I also was, you know, cleaning and fixing things too. And it took much less time putting it back in, probably about 8 hours, mostly because I was just going through, making sure, you know, while you got stuff apart, you know, you don't want to go through it again. So hope this was helpful. Good luck.